Bonjour, je suis Madeleine Coste, je suis française et je travaille pour le mouvement Slow Food. My organization is one of the 200 organizations, some of whose representatives are here today, that help support the European Citizens Initiative Save Bees and Farmers, collect 1 million statements of support for our demands to phasing out pesticides and restoring biodiversity. The reward for this huge support from European citizens is that we now get to present our demands to the European Commission and the European Parliament, which we're very excited about. The European Citizens Initiative is the only democratic tool the EU offers its citizens. EU citizens can use it to call on the Commission to propose legislation to address shortcomings in the EU and to develop Europe, provided that they have collected 1 million statements of support in at least 7 member states. This hurdle is quite challenging. In the 11 years since this instrument exists, only 6 initiatives have managed this. We will be number 7 today, and we very much hope that Europe's elected politicians will take our concerns seriously.
I am Věra Jourová, Vice President for Transparency and Values, and one of the values of the EU are active citizens, the people who care, the people who demand things, and that's why I am the master of the process. Dear organizers, your initiative is an important contribution to the debate about issues that concern all of us, namely how can we secure our food production while protecting the environment and restoring its biodiversity, and how can we ensure the economic resilience of farming and enable farmers to play a key part in the transition to a more sustainable agriculture.
Mein Name ist André Prescher-Spiridon, ich bin aus Deutschland und arbeite für den Bund für Umwelt- und Naturschutz, Friends of the Earth Germany. In dem Zusammenhang habe ich auch eben für die Europäische Bürgerinitiative mitgearbeitet. And I'm particularly happy that we have the overwhelming support of the scientific community. And therefore my expectation today is that this voice of science is heard by the decision makers in the European Parliament. Pesticide reduction is not a means to itself. Its ultimate goal is to conserve biodiversity and climate, which are the pillars of our food security. There has been a recent statement of 700 scientists saying that the heavy use of pesticides we have in Europe at the moment is a threat to biodiversity by harming birds, pollinators, the biodiversity in the soil on which our production depends. And therefore, we're very happy that we have 2 of those scientists today with us, and we really hope that the decision makers in the European Parliament listen to what they have to say and listen to the data, which shows the varying trends, but also shows opportunities that lie within things like agroecology that can help us to reduce pesticide use.
I'm a scientist, so what I will do, I will give you some scientific ideas about what is going on. Pesticide residues are omnipresent in ecosystem and humans, and they highly accumulate in indoor dust where people, farmers, children, consumers are exposed to. Most of the residues are hazardous for ecosystem and humans. What is the real risk for ecosystem and human being exposed to mixtures of high numbers of hazardous pesticides? Who has an answer to this? Nobody.
Politicians have called for an additional impact assessment to the assessment performed by the Commission before the outbreak of the war in Ukraine. Let me be very clear. There is not a single serious scientist in Europe who would argue that the pesticides regulation would pose a risk to European food security. Quite the contrary, there is a high degree of consensus that the rapid loss of biodiversity and climate change constitute the biggest threats to the sustainability and resilience of our food system.
For 20 years now, with another group of farmers, we've been trying to reduce the use of synthetic pesticides. All of the farmers in this group have been able to reduce rather quickly and easily, I would say, in 2 years, by 50% the use of these synthetic pesticides.
Agroecological systems have this very strong and quite fast influence on all kinds of biodiversity. Even after 1 year of the implementation of this system, you can see biodiversity flourishing in the farm, and that impresses also the farmers themselves.
Hola, me llamo Noa Simón y soy investigadora de abejas y toxicología medioambiental. También soy la directora científica de la ONG BeeLife, que es una ONG de apicultores protegiendo polinizadores y medio ambiente. My expectations for today is that we succeed to convince decision makers about the importance of the ECI demands and understand that we cannot take them from each other. They need to be all of them taken into consideration.
The ECI's first demand is indeed to have an EU-binding target of reducing the use of synthetic pesticides by 80% by 2030.
And what we would like to see is really coherence. Coherence in all the European Union and the countries, let's say, that are paying enormous amount of money for restoring nature at the same time as we are also giving money to destroy this nature.
It cannot be understated for us how important this third demand is to support farmers in their efforts to transform towards a more pesticides-free and a nature-friendly farming practices.
Ich heiße Helmut Burtscher-Schaden, ich arbeite für Global 2000, Friends of the Earth Austria. Meine Erwartungen heute, my expectations, citizens should see which politicians are acting in their interests and which are not. What distinguishes our ECI from previous ones is that since last summer, two legislative proposals are on the table, one on pesticide reduction and one on biodiversity restoration. These proposals are fiercely contested by industry and some industry-friendly politicians, so we expect a lively debate.
I don't believe that we should be having debates about banning synthetic pesticides. I don't know if that really brings us further.
What the Commission presented now with the sustainable use of plant protection products is so important, and I just want to echo what the initiators said. It is clearly not helping if a major political group, the EPP, says with fake arguments that we do not have to do anything about it. We have to act.
I did not like a comment that one of the speakers had that said we shouldn't be influenced by suppliers because their profits were on the decline. I don't care about suppliers. I am interested in farmers.
Even a much lower ambition is under attack by the vested interests who make billions of selling their chemical toxins.
The Commission has heard the message loud and clear. Our citizens want healthy food without pesticides.
Thank you for this very lively panel. I think views are not always converging, but we still see a pathway, and we will have to find a majority to vote this text on sustainable use of pesticide with this minus 50% objective.
We bring bees as pollinators to our farm, and I can say that in the course of the last 30 years, we haven't had any problems with bees.
I'm grateful for this initiative. It's important. And let me end with a warning about a mistake that is being made. And the mistake is that these regulations, if we think that we are going against food safety, then or food security, you've missed the point.
It was simply cutting off the branch upon which we're sitting. The decrease in biodiversity, destroying groundwater with nitrates, the destruction of soil, climate change. This forces a rethink. We represent the citizens. At the end of the day, that's our role, representing the citizens. So once again, I'd like to appeal to all of my colleagues to work constructively on this legislation, not to block this.
The Commissioner for Agriculture has actually said that in this present situation and with these scenarios, those two strategies would have to be put off. Thank you.
Transition is the magic word, meaning if we want to preserve the world as we know it, we have to change the way we deal with it. Reduce food waste, switch to more plant-based diet, produce in a climate and biodiversity-friendly way. After 3 decades of repeatedly setting pesticide reduction targets and failing to meet them, the EU finally seemed determined to make it right. Nevertheless, it is with concern that we stand before you today, dear decision makers, because the EU pesticide reduction plans are under serious threat. The origin of this threat may be that halving the use of pesticides will halve their sales on the European market, so for pesticide manufacturers, billions are at stake. Already in 2020, we observed with growing concern how some MEPs of the currently largest group in the Parliament used the pandemic as an argument to declare a food crisis in order to postpone the shift to a sustainable food system. Today, it is the terrible war in the Ukraine. The proposal, and I want to say it clear, to reduce pesticides is not only tenable, it is without alternatives. I appeal to you, on behalf of the 1.1 million supporters of our ECI, knowing from Eurobarometer polls that their concerns are actually shared by a majority of Europeans. I appeal to you on behalf of my kids and all the other kids who will feel the consequences of our actions or inactions the most, and who probably would have signed the ECI if they would have been old enough.
Je m'appelle Martin Lermine, je suis belge et je travaille pour le réseau européen d'action sur les pesticides ou Pesticide Action Network Europe. I came here today to transmit a positive message to the members of the European Parliament and the positive energy behind our movement towards a pesticide-free agriculture. Pan-Europe has been working for more than 20 years towards a reduction in pesticide use, and never before has it been more important to reduce pesticides, protect citizens' health and biodiversity, and never before have we been as close as now to meeting our goals. Today, 1.1 million EU citizens are present in this House. They demand to stop pesticides and to start working with nature, not against it. By supporting measures to transition EU agriculture towards agroecological practices, you will not only better protect our health, that of our children and grandchildren, as well as the environment, but you will also help reconcile the farming community with the rest of society. Farmers should not be seen as polluters or destructors. They should be seen as the basis of our good health and our future. Farmers should be seen as heroes by the society. Let us act now. We count on your support.